Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, taking another fun episode for you guys this evening because we're going over the Ocarina of Time recompilation project. Because recently on the channel we've been talking about all of the decomps and recomps going on, and I see a lot of comments in the actual comment section with people saying they'd love to see Ocarina of Time. And because decomps and recomps are a new concept, even though this has been out for 3 years now, I feel like a lot of people don't know that the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time has already seen a recompilation project on PC. So we're going to be going over it today, talking about all of the changes and why I think this is the de facto best way to play the game. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But the best part, or at least my favorite part about this recompilation isn't just the base Ocarina of Time. There's going to be a built-in randomizer, there's going to be a built-in actual boss rush, as well as the beta Ocarina of Time set of information and levels. So you can basically just go into the options menu and set the beta on, and you'll be able to kind of navigate around a world that looks familiar but isn't quite what you got on the retail release. So as far as recomps are concerned, this thing is absolutely loaded with a metric crap ton of awesome new features, and I would say it looks absolutely stunning as well. And it's one of those things, Ocarina of Time, which is an absolutely amazingly influential game that really set the tone both for what Zelda would become as a franchise as well as what it would look like in 3D. But going back to the Nintendo 64, if you don't have all that nostalgia for the game, it can feel a little bit antiquated. Now granted, with the recomp, some of these static backgrounds still look good, but they did use pre-rendered assets in Ocarina of Time, so some things are going to scale a lot better than others, and those 2D assets that are pre-rendered aren't going to look as good. Once we actually get into the Temple of Time here in the beta version, you can just see how absolutely stunning this game looks running on PC. It doesn't really even need a massive PC to do this. You can kind of bring along maybe 2 potatoes duct taped together, and you should have an absolutely excellent time playing the recomp version of Ocarina of Time. Now this is the Ship to Harkinian released by Harbor Masters, and if that name sounds familiar, they've also done Majora's Mask as well. There's actually 2 different recomps of Majora's Mask out there, but the entirety of the Legend of Zelda games, at least the retail releases, have been decomped and recomped on Nintendo 64 for PC, and I know there is another Fan Zelda game in the process of getting built into the recomp engine as well. Now you'll see here as we fly through Koriki Village with the ferry, it's going to look a little bit like a low frame rate. That is because by default this targets the game's native frame rate. You can go into the settings, and I'll show you that in just a moment, so you can dial up the frame rate, or basically the frame interpretation, because a lot of what is behind Ocarina of Time is tied to that internal frame rate, so they do it just slightly differently. But honestly, this fly-through has never looked this good, and if you do want to play a recomp of Ocarina of Time, you can 100% do it today. And that really is the fun thing about these projects, why I've been talking about them so much recently on the channel. I feel like in the next year or two, you're just going to see dozens upon dozens of games, Nintendo 64 and otherwise, get decompilated and then recompiled as far as their actual code is concerned. But you'll see here as we're running around with a Link, it does look like it still is running at the native frame rate for Nintendo 64, and that's because it is. And you absolutely do not have to change this whatsoever. If that's the visual vibe you like, and I kind of like it as well, you can 100% leave it. But if you go into the options menu, there's going to be so many different things you can do in here. Not really going to go over all of them, but if you go to graphics, you are going to see a slider for current FPS. By default, it's original 20, and you can dial that up to whatever else you want, including the MSAA anti-aliasing. I usually put it at 4x, seems to be good for me, and I do have the widescreen 16:9 on as well. You can make this thing run at whatever frame rate you want, but I really feel like 60 is the sweet spot as far as the game's overall refresh rate and how that feels on screen, because you'll immediately see the fluidity in the game has massively improved. We have all of those extra virtual frames in there, so it's one of those things, if you played the game back in the 90s and you want that nostalgic 20 frame per second look, then you don't need to adjust anything. But if you either want more frames or weren't around back in the Nintendo 64 era and you have no nostalgia for that 20 frame per second counter, you can go into the options menu and change that and so many other graphical settings. Really, you can dial this thing into however you want it to look, and that really is the nice thing about these recomp projects. They give you basically the unlimited options to do whatever you want, randomizers, boss rush modes, and a ton of graphical enhancements you can play around with. And the best part is it still sounds amazing as a recomp, so go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with more. Sounds exactly like Ocarina of Time should, and the best part is the gameplay is exactly like Ocarina of Time should. In the past, I have played this game from start to finish on the Recomp, and I had nothing but an outstanding time. And the best part is it gives you unlimited options to really articulate the gameplay experience you want. If you want to go 4:3 at 20 frames per second, you can totally do that. If you want to dial it up to 240 frames per second on 16:9 or even ultra wide, you're going to be able to do whatever you want. And even though we do have software emulation that will allow you to enhance the graphics on Nintendo 64 games, honestly, Ship to Heart Kitty lets you dial everything up to 11 in the best ways possible. It's just Ocarina of Time as you've never seen it before. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, have you played this in the past or not? Because like I said, I'm covering this even though it is a couple of years old, because so many people in my comment section have said, I wish Ocarina of Time would be recompiled, and it really does exist. I'm going to do a video very shortly on all of the different recomp projects on Nintendo 64 that you can play today, because everyone asks if there is some sort of centralized website where you can find out all of the different recomp games you can play, and I have not found it in any way, shape, or form. So if you know where there is one, leave me a comment down below. Maybe if not, I'll just start like a GitHub page that you can link to. That way there's links to all the other creators out there and their builds, so you could just basically enjoy them, because it really does seem like a little bit of lost knowledge. And you'll see here on the boss rush mode, you can articulate it however you want. You can go through all of the bosses, just basically giving yourself a little bit of a side game in Ocarina. And I would say again, the graphics look absolutely outstanding. These are still the same models from something like Ocarina of Time. Obviously the textures look better, but they still have that Nintendo 64 blur to them. So it's kind of a best of both worlds situation as far as I'm concerned. Of course, you can kind of modify things in and out as you want, but I just love getting the original models and original look, except with that modern flair of widescreen and better frame rates. There's an entire cheats menu as well as all sorts of different options to just kind of make it whatever you want it to make. And honestly, having that beta Ocarina of Time in there is just an extra bonus, because there was so much preview content shown back in the day of Ocarina of Time that people have always been curious about, and obviously never made the final game. So having the ability to kind of tour around some of that in this actual build is just the icing on an otherwise already delicious cake. And the boss rush mode is a ton of fun as well. You can basically just try to speedrun this thing with your friends or submit to some leaderboards online with some captures just to see how quickly you can go through the entire boss rush mode on this build. But again, just look how incredible this looks. The frame rate, the pacing, the controls, everything just 100% works. And that's all you really want out of a recomp project like this. You want to be able to sit down, double click the executable, and just start playing the game like it was a native PC port, because that's basically what all these recomps are. They are PC ports from the code from Nintendo 64, and you want them to play like any other game out there. And you'll see here you can just enable the beta quest. It'll automatically reset the game, and you'll be right back out into the game world, except on that beta quest mode. So it is a really fun feature just to give you extras. And again, I did leave a link to the GitHub page down below so you can download the most current build for yourself. But one more soundtrack sample, because again, amazing soundtrack and amazing recomp. 35 seconds and I'll be right back. I love that sometimes the game uses music for the soundtrack, and other times it uses a soundscape. And as we're running around Kakariko Village with that on fire, it's just such an otherworldly vibe here with the increased graphics. And as we pop into the graveyard again, it just looks so good in widescreen. Every once in a while you will see a little pop in, a little bit of culling, and that's just going to happen. But otherwise, this is basically a perfect visual experience. I just love this game, getting that extra widescreen support out, and you will see there that the heads-up display extends up to the left and right-hand corners of the screen, so none of that visual information that you need is going to be stuck persisting to a 4:3 window, which makes a huge difference as far as the visuals are concerned. And seeing the mountain in the background with all of those clouds just kind of circling it looks spectacular in this recomp. And that really is the thing about all of these recompilation projects. They take outstanding games, 10 out of 10s from back in the day, and just give you a new way to play them. And for some reason, it seems like the majority of the commenters down below just didn't know that Ocarina of Time existed, so that's why we're doing this. But I got one more recomp video coming up of another game that people keep talking about in the comments, wishing they'd see recomped and actually exists. But go ahead and guess what that is in the comments down below. And if you have played the game, leave me your thoughts, because I would be curious to see. But Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask exist as recomp versions of the game, and you definitely should play them today. After that, we're done. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.